Good evening, dear friends. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very happy today we have our guest, Emil Draitser, who is our friend for many years. He actually published 16 books in the United States, and we made the presentations of many of them. And my congratulations with the new book, which is extremely interesting and also relates to our program because we present art and literature of immigrant artists and writers. And just a few words about Emil. Emil was born in Odessa, in a very important city.
Ukraine.
It's in Ukraine, but it was extremely important for the whole our culture. Now we call it Eastern European culture, I would say. He was born there. He became a pretty successful young writer by name Emil Abramov, because his name didn't sound maybe sexy enough for that time.
No, because it was Fyodor Abramov.
Fyodor
Russian
Abramov.
writer, so-
Because of Fyodor
Yes.
Abramov. Okay. So he was Emil Abramov, and he became his like a freelancer, contributing satirical articles to leading Soviet periodicals like Literary Gazeta, Izvestia, Youth, Crocodile, which was very important, and also to the Central Radio. He also did something for satirical news through the week, Mosfilm, and he received a few prizes, special prize for his satirical stories at All Union Literary Contest. Eventually, he was blacklisted for writing an article critical of an important official. Soon he immigrated to the United States. In 1975, he settled in Los Angeles, where he earned a PhD in Russian literature from UCLA. Now he is a professor emeritus at Hunter College of the City University of New York. He is award-winning author of artistic and scholarly prose. Besides his 16 books, he has published essays and short stories, also in Los Angeles Times, Partisan Review, and many other publications. And he is laureate of Mark Aldanov International Prize, 3-time recipient of prestigious fellowships from New Jersey State Council on the Arts. He has been awarded residencies at the Vermont Art Studios, Woodstock Art Colony, and Bonn Center for the Arts in Canada. You can see much more information in our website, RussianAmericanCulture.com, and also please check there for our future events. Thank you very much.
All right. So the question is, what made me to write this book? Well, actually, the question would be quite simple. This is the 4th book in my memoir. I started my first book published by University of California Press, Shush, Growing Up Jewish Under Stalin. Then followed by University of Wisconsin Press in the Jaws of Crocodile, where I described my work as a satirical writer and what came out of it. And then finally, actually, Farewell Mama Odessa, the book about parting with Mama Odessa, how we in Odessan called Odessa Mama, and immigration to United States. So I immigrated October 7, 1974, which means this year is 50 years as I am in this country. So therefore, it was natural for me to question. 50 years has passed. So wasn't that smooth, my transition from totally different totalitarian country into America, a symbol of democracy. So, and then I actually picked up a Bible and decided to compare the modern day exodus, the exodus of my generation of Jews from the Red Pharaohs from the Soviet Union, with the biblical one. And what I, to my surprise, found that actually there are some similarities. For example, numbers. The Bible says 600,000 men, not counting children. Mind you, they don't even mention women. So therefore, if you multiply, it's about the same amount. From 1974, my time, to 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's about roughly the same 1.5 million people left Soviet Union. Okay? Now, although, of course, Soviet immigrants you cannot compare to biblical slaves. However, still, there were some similarities. Most of us had enough wages to feed ourselves. And oftentimes it was not enough money, so we can borrow from our friends to a paycheck, the next payment, okay? Now, we have no right to private property. Maybe dacha, those who are of all means and so on, but no more than that. We could live only where our bosses allowed us to live. It's hard to imagine, but look, there have been some cities closed totally for non-resident. You cannot just come to Moscow and Leningrad at that time, St. Petersburg, and settle there. No, you have to get so-called military, you have to have a military permission, means propiska in Russian. I mean, your passport had to be stamped, and you have the right to live here, okay? So all of this made a kind of a moreover, travel outside of the country was practically impossible. Well, first of all, they have to check you out, your ideological political stand. You have to get characteristics from local party committee. Then finally, they may allow you to go only in a group. And to that effect, I recalled the Soviet underground jokes to illustrate this situation. A plane coming from Moscow to Paris, coming up, and one passenger stood up and said, "Anyone here knows how to say in French, 'I would like to ask for political asylum'?" Then one man stood up and said, "What does it mean? That you are planning to ask for political asylum in France?" No. I just wanted to know who is the supervisor of the group. In other words, supervisor was all the KGB man who was watching you. You cannot travel alone. So all of it. When people say Iron Curtain, it was Iron Curtain. Moreover, from what I know, for many people, that's probably one of the main incentive to immigrate, just to get out finally, to see what's going on in the world. Okay. Now, so first of all, I wanted to explain the reason that how the book is built. The book is built around I looked up to my publications in America within 10, 15 years. That means that reflect my Soviet mind, how I came into what I brought with me, what understanding of the world I brought with me. And these pieces were published not only in Russian Emigre press, but also in English, in various English periodicals. So I compare it with my today's understanding of, after 50 years in America, how this happened. So this is just about my Soviet background as a satirical writer. The crocodile was the main satirical magazine, the organ of Central Committee of Communist Party, mind you. Now, this was my crocodile ID. I was a correspondent, and this is me, younger me, and so on. Now, what does mean? How the hell you could, for many people who will never have been to Soviet satire, looks like contradiction in terms. How come? You can satirize in a totalitarian country? Yes, there were only two ways to do it. First of all, do not generalize. In other words, I, as a satirical writer, could write that the shoes of factory number 13 in the city of Pinsk are not good. But I cannot write that the whole system is not working. You cannot. You have to buy somewhere else. Check from Czechoslovakia, from other countries, because there's no. Then, of course, as I was growing up, I realized that I cannot write it anymore. So I turned to something that became popular in the country after the invasion of Czechoslovakia by Soviet troops in 1968. They created in a number of places, but primarily in Literary Gazette, a club of 12 chairs. And what was possible there is to use the elaborate Aesopian language. That means language through hints between the lines and so on, so initiated people would understand what I'm talking about. So that was my main contribution, and which I give some samples in my book. So that's what I now let's start with the first book. Part of the book is Discovering America. So first and foremost, anyone who lived in 1974 in Soviet Union understand the first shock is a supermarket, American supermarket, against the empty shelves in many Soviet cities. It was a shock, needless to say. And when I described the shock in one of my columns written in America, it was published very quickly by American periodical, because it was unthinkable for them that isn't it something to that extent. A year, maybe 2 years after me, a very famous case of a defector, Belenko. He took a plane, the last kind of a modification of a military Soviet plane, and he took it to Japan. He escaped. Needless to say that he immediately was picked up and brought to America, to CIA, to Pentagon. He was briefed. And what happened really one of those days of his debriefing is that the CIA officer who handled him, on the way to bring him back to the hotel in Washington, D.C., said, "Excuse me, you don't mind if I stop at the supermarket to buy instant coffee? My wife asked me that I forgot." You want to come with me? Yeah. So they came into supermarket. When they got back into the car, what the CIA officer noticed, that kind of a face of Belenko. He was angry. He was angry as hell. He said, "How come I risk my life to come here and so on? Why did you go to that extent to make this supermarket for me?" He could not believe this is a regular supermarket. He thought this is especially made up by Hollywood in order to seduce him. That's what. So just to show you the huge difference between the country I left and the country I came in. Now, also the other thing that was comparing the official attitude toward labor, work ethics. In the Soviet Union, there was plenty of this kind of a posters. Labor in this society is a matter of honor, a matter of valor and heroism. Okay? When I came to America, somebody took me to this cafeteria, TGI. I said, what does it mean? Thank God it's Friday. Wow! What about this glory of working and so on and so forth? Americans simply admit, yeah, I work hard, now I want to relax, right? That's it. So that was shocking. Now, however, that was important. That the attitude toward work ethics, was considerably different. In America, as all of you know, to help somebody is to give him a job. Okay? In Russia, in the Soviet Union, the underground jokes were, wherever you were going to work, as long as you don't, or horses die from work, and so on. Work was something that everybody was employed, oftentimes nothing to do, oftentimes boring, and so on and so forth. So it was, moreover, I had one very first steps in America, I got an American friend who was fighting for freedom of Soviet Jews to come to the United States. And he tried to help a couple, immigrant couple, to invite him to work for he had a little company producing drapes in California, in Southern California. And he told me, Emil, I don't understand it. I gave them a job, but they take up to an hour, smoke breaks, they don't care about this. You see, because they brought Soviet ethics, Soviet understanding of what the job. They didn't understand that he actually tried to help them, to give them salary for work done. Okay, so that was also big deal. So now, with all of this, then obviously in the first stop, Americanist people. We found them, needless to say, that in Soviet press they all described as money mongers, that all what they think it's about. We found them overall people who are cheerful, friendly, even to the extent they would say, you worry about your English? Oh, your English much better than my Russian. To hell with him. Why he needs Russian in America, okay? But to that extent, you have to understand. I came with English, which was, obviously, I have to study English in high school and then in my first college. But obviously, we didn't know the American English. So I knew, obviously, the bank word. But one day I called, already in Southern California, where I settled, I called a bank and asked for a clerk who is doing, arranges loans for. I needed to buy used car and so on. And I asked her, "Is Mr. Smith? Can I talk to Mr. Smith?" He says, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Smith has passed away." And I said, "When he's coming back?" I knew to pass, but pass away. Passage, go back and forth. That's to that extent. That was my. So therefore, it was discovering America of that kind. Secondly, what I came to is that. In popular culture, we could not understand the difference between popular culture and true culture, in other words, educated culture and so on. So therefore, once I remember I listened to the radio with this song, which was very popular at that time, maybe still, "Wonderful World." And there was a line, I don't know much geography, algebra, trigonometry, but I know I love you. And I thought, this is the pickup line in America? That you're ignorant? What is this? I couldn't understand it. It took me a long while, needless to say, I came myself through the American system, that in American system, the attitude toward, unlike in Soviet Union, for example, the first, let's say, everybody studies the same thing up to, let's say, in high school. The same requirement. It's not, you cannot select what you're really interested in. So therefore, I found that what I'm saying is that the more you want to go up, the more difficult it is. Needless to say that by now, it is known that in the world, graduate schools of Harvard or Stanford and MIT are best in the world because the requirements are so much higher than any other. It took time to realize that that's what the difference. What also I've found about Americans that for them, car is a living being. You see this? How? My daughter immigrated a few years after me, and the local Jewish community called for people to help. So some family brought their used car in order to give to my daughter. And they came all family in this car, and they took a picture before parting with them. It's almost like parting a member of their family. Wow. Now, when I bought my own little car, the first brand new car, when I finally could afford it, my friend, American friend, came in and said, I love the smell of the new car. It's like a baby powder smell. Human being, they're living for that. Of course, we could not imagine in the Soviet Union that the cars could be taken as a living being. Now, also friendship. We found there is a difference in friendship. By the way, I now, in my class of Russian Cinema and Society, I showed a film, actually started quite earlier, in the film Oblomov, which is mid-19th century. And the difference of our attitude, how the main character, Oblomov, sees Russian friendship, and the friendship of a German-born boy. In America, a friend tells to his friend the truth. For him, this is how he's helping him. In America, in Russia, it's almost like a member of a family. You have to rely on friendship because we oftentimes, as I already said, you have to borrow money from somebody, you have to step in. In other words, there is no question about it. So this is a huge, huge difference. Moreover, in America, it is known that don't mix friendship with financial interest because some of it will eventually be hurt. All right? And think of in old Russian sense of it. So that's also a big difference. Now, came to a point in my life that I got divorced and I had to know how to go about to find a mate in America. So one of my friends became my love guru because I had no knowledge whatsoever. For example, he said, read the personal ads in New York Review of Books, things like, highbrow, whatever it is. I read, and he said, well, be sure, there's a lot of catfishing. Catfishing? Catfishing. I thought, what is catfishing? A cat catching fishing? I couldn't find out what's going on. They explain, some people misrepresent themselves, so be careful about it, and so on. So Then I read person, I said, looking for a man who is cultured and successful. I say, look, they all want me. Emil, no, you're not successful. So, wait a minute, but that time I already published like 5 or 6 books. I was a teacher, professor. No. In America, you're successful when you have money, a lot of money. Then you're successful. That's a general understanding of success, what it is. Now, also a writer in Russia. In Russia, first of all, literature is not, primarily in America, literature is a entertainment tool. Primarily. In Russia is always such a reverie with the great Russian writers of Tolstoy and Chekhov and Turgenev and so on. And moreover, in the Soviet time, we read the Soviet writers who were able to tell us the truth. And in other words, they were like priests more than commercial. So therefore, I could not understand how, for example, one day I walked by and I saw in a next to a bookstore, they throw away without front cover a book by Bashevis Singer, and I could not understand it. Bashevis Singer was then published in New Yorker. He became Nobel laureate and so on. I couldn't understand it. So I asked my friend. I was at that time at UCLA as a graduate student. I asked my American friend. He said, "Emil, yeah. Look, it's nothing to do with it. It's just commerce. Probably the bookstore is small. They have only that little space for bestsellers where they can really sell. It's not in the same league as Bashevis Singer." So they decided, and they have agreement with the publisher. They send the cover as a proof that the book is not sold, and they will get, because it makes no sense for the price of the postage, between the price of the book versus price of postage. That makes no sense to, the publisher is not interested to get back the book and so on. So that's totally different kind of a attitude. Okay. Now, however, what I wanted to, what I found about America, when I published a small collection of Soviet underground jokes, Forbidden Laughter, in English and Russian. And I was amazed. It was published by a small publishing house in Los Angeles. And I was amazed of the attention it brought. He did nothing about it at that time, about promotion, about publicity, nothing. All of a sudden, I saw article in New York Times, then Washington Post, then Atlantic Monthly reviewed it, then Chicago Tribune. I was invited on a Miller Griffin show at that time, was big, and I couldn't understand what's going on. What is it? Very simple. My book broke the stereotype of Russians before that as being totally humorless. Why? Look, this is the movie From Russia with Love. This is the Russian heroine. Okay. Now, this is Ninotchka, the famous movie. She doesn't smile through the whole movie, only the end when she falls in love, she produces some small smile. Otherwise, she's a commissar. Remember, she's not doing any of this, okay? Now, what before I learned, there was a Rocky and Bullwinkle show, and this is Russian character as a spies. Boris bad enough. It's bad enough. Okay, they made the Russian word, and Natasha is a Russian word, fatale. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah. So that was Dracula's daughter, and then we see Igor. The name of Slavic name Igor was given to this kind of characters. So it did not fit the underground humor that we all who live in the Soviet Union were survived by, okay? Yeah, so, but why especially? At that time, it was a time of Cold War, one remind, and everybody was thinking about the question, was a genre of question, will there be a third world war? And the answer that everybody liked is there will not be a third world war, but there will be such a fight for peace that no single stone will be left unturned. That's what brought attention. That's what all about. It was an article in some scholarly magazines about it, all of this. Now, and then another part of my book is that discovering self in America. So that's all I discovered. Now, what I discovered in America about myself. First of all, in one of the Russian Emigre papers, there was a advertisement. We offer marriage, business marriage. Business marriage. So I called to the editor. They knew me, of course. They say, "Is it some kind of a two companies merged together?" And so, no. There's somebody who has a American citizenship. They offer if some foreigner want to come and get, marriage and so on. If they come, of course, in terms of money, the same agreement and so on. I couldn't understand. I say, do you know it's between 5 and 8 years of prison of violating federal law? What is it? He said, oh, we have a sign in the paper. The editorialship is not responsible for any personal. It's all up to them. So that's, and why? Very simple. Because basically, if we can summarize, Russia was never a country of the law. There was a Russian proverb that says the law is like a horse carriage shaft. It would turn wherever you want it. Okay, so basically there was no reliance on law in Russian consciousness. For example, Russians even understood it for themselves, and they even joked about themselves, said, how to make a Russian to jump from a bridge? Very simple. Just hoist a sign over it. Jumping from this bridge is prohibited by law. You understand? Resistance of law, is said. Well, other thing that impressed me in America is have nothing to do with a laughing matter, is that the care of people with disabilities, the kneeling buses, special places for parking, a special translator for people who cannot talk. This is amazing. And this is, I grew up in Odessa after World War II, and that's how it looked like. So many people came from war totally, without legs. They spend most of their time on the streets of the town. That's how I remember them. In a couple of years, all of a sudden, they all disappeared from the cities of Soviet Union for a simple reason. They were forcibly taken off the streets of the Soviet cities, relocated to special reservation in the north of the country. Because the foreigners, the tourists that come to make bad impression and so on, that wasn't the way. Okay, so that was definitely something that. And secondly, I ran into one of my I remember I told you, one of my columns that I published in Los Angeles Herald Examiner was about protesting in America. And actually, it's based on real event. I was a graduate student there, and I passed by, and the secretary said, "Emil, somebody is calling there. Maybe you should help them." So the woman called and said, "We need a Russian name for a tiger." I say, "Well, usually I don't socialize with tigers, but if it's a cat, we call it Kisa." She said, "Great, Kisa." I say, "Wait a minute, why do you need it?" Well, we organized protests to save Siberian tigers. Okay? So, and I, of course, wrote a piece that in America they protest against themselves, against everything in the, whatever, that's what it was. How come everything is, and then I realized now when I reread it, oh my God, if not for protesting, I would not be able to come to America, because there was a huge Soviet Jewry movement in America that pushed the government, the Congress, to make a specific condition for Soviet to sell Soviet grain to the Soviet Union if they allow immigration of minorities, at least. So, and this is the pictures of what really happened at that time. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. I discovered myself that I carried it in me. What else? Yeah, and I actually wanted to address, bring your attention that I learned a lot about Russian and American culture from this book that was published in American English by my colleague, Professor Kostanovich of Vanderbilt University. And the book is published also in Russian. Корни и кроны, откуда есть пошла русская культура in Russia today. In Russia today, this book. Now, what I wanted to also tell. So, what is then? Is there any kind of an end game? Can you overcome your immigrant mentality, your understanding of your culture eventually and be free? Mind you, I already said, I'm 50 years in America, and all of a sudden, last year I discovered that still I don't know everything. For example, I had a friend of many years, my friend, we worked together at UCLA as classmates, and he lived in California, in Southern California. And I live in New Jersey, so we often talk on the phone. So one of my conversations, I called him, and his voice became weak and then totally disappeared. So I was worried. What happened? I knew that he was not a young man. Maybe something happened. So I called our mutual friend, an American, and asked her, listen, something happened probably with our friend. She said, what's his address? I said, why do you need his address? He's in Southern California. No. I need his address. Let's compare this to be sure. Why? I'm calling police. It never will cross my mind to call police in Soviet Union for any help. And they said there is a certain thing as a wellness check. And it turned out to be, yes, she called police, the local police in Southern California. They came to the building where he lived to ask manager for a key, open up, and they found him on the floor with unconscious. They called called ambulance, and they brought him to emergency room and brought him to life. That's what I'm saying. And there is actually American proverb, which I would cite here, that you can take a country boy out of the country, but you cannot take country out of the country boy. It's still there. Okay? Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Tarla, put the end, could you go back one slide?
Excuse me?
Go back one slide, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Since we're here, I just wanted to show you, since I was, I remember, I thought that I had it. Probably didn't survive. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes.
When was
Excuse me?
Sorry. When was Forbidden Laughter published?
1980. Actually, why especially? Well, because 1979, at the end of the year, Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. So obviously they thought, "Mom, God, maybe if Russians do have sense of humor, that means maybe we can negotiate with them, something to stop them." So
So the book became popular at this time.
very popular.
Do you have this book still? Or-
Yes, till today it's my bestseller. It's on the Amazon.
I would love to buy this book.
It's in Russian and English. Russian.
Russian like anecdotes, yes?
Well, yeah, I collected them for, all of that time about various kind of aside. I was really was pleased that the famous Russian writer who read this book, he said, "Oh, Emil, congratulations." I said, "Well, what's the big deal? Axioma." I said, no. To select what I try to show all different sides of life that are reflected in this, not only political. One example I gave you. For example, what is the exchange of opinion? It's America. You come to your boss with your opinion, and you live with his.
Oh my God, this is Russian.
That's a Russian. Yeah.
I don't know. Yes.
Well-
What about like Jewish humor? Because the Jewish humor it was very important. It was
Of course.
translated into Russian culture.
Sure.
And it is the greatest, satiric.
Well, in my research, I wrote a book about. Actually, I have two books based on Russian this humorous folklore. One is taking penguins to the movies. I try to understand what's beyond jokes about all kinds of nationalities, about Georgians, about Chukchis, about needless to say Jews and so on. This is a book called "Taking Penguins to the Movies." It was published by University of
Penguins.
Excuse me?
Penguins.
Taking penguin, and you know why? It is based on a joke, Russian joke, that in the north, a pickup car full of penguins comes to a policeman, and the driver says, "Listen, where can I take penguins here?" He said, "What do you mean where? To the zoo." "Oh, good idea." So he went there with a car full of penguins and so on. Then 2 hours later, he comes back with all penguins are there. So the policeman said, wait a minute, didn't I tell you to take them to the zoo?" "Yeah, I took them, now taking them to the movies." So that's different than Chukchin jokes. They are not distinguishing yet. So then another book that is, again, study of this underground humor of sexual relationship between men and women, making war, not love, was published by, who published it? One of the university presses, I forgot. So this, my scholarly work was based. But my, can I say, no, my bestseller of scholarly books is my dissertation. Techniques of Satire. The case of Shidrin is now in almost 1,200 public university libraries of the world. There's a world catalog. But at the same time, but again, I'm a little bit bragging, but Shush, Growing Up Jewish Understanding, 1,600 libraries of the world has it. Somehow, and some of my friends said that's my best book. Well, it was published, first I published in Russian, Кто ты такой? And then I expanded for an American edition about World War II and things like that. So it was.
A very, very interesting question for me always. Who created these anecdotes in Russia?
I'll tell you how.
Who?
Well, I answered this question.
Okay, it's very interesting.
It is folkloric genre. How folkloric genre is, somebody in conversation comes up with a punchline. And then, as you see, there's jokes that in different variants. Because once you have a punchline, you can create who possibly can say it, that kind of a thing. So it is truly folkloric genre. It's not like somebody, sit down and write this, Obviously, people who most likely deal with wars, like journalists working on, they may use it, and try to produce and so on. Even once, frankly speaking, for example, I invented a joke like that. How? I just learned that an anti-Semite, married a Jewish woman. I was puzzled. And it immediately joke came to me that, I'll say it in Russian. Почему Иванов женился на Шнайдер? Он же антисемит. Но он очень хорош в ближнем бою. Okay? He is good in a close-range fight. I invented it. And then I saw some people repeated it. Obviously, I didn't need to be cited and so on. That's helpful. Or some other of immigrants. I knew that in America they speak English, but not to such a degree. Okay.
Well, yeah. About English, yeah, it's many jokes here. You remember this one when in Brighton Beach came a man and said, "Where is the vehicle department?" And people don't understand him. And he again, "Where is the vehicle department?" Second, no, nothing. Third time, where? And he went. And one Russian said, "Did his English help him really?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so
All right.
So we all like this joke.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So much.